Your world is perfectly comfortable. It is peaceful. It is optimized. And yet, in some unspoken way, you are enslaved. Aldous Huxley saw this future coming, not one of tyranny through force, but through pleasure. Unlike Orwell's 1984, which painted a vision of oppression through surveillance, control, and fear, Huxley's Brave New World warned of something far more insidious, a society controlled not by pain, but by pleasure, a world where people wouldn't need to be forced into submission, because they would willingly surrender themselves in exchange for convenience, entertainment, and comfort. Huxley's nightmare was not a world where books were banned, but a world where no one wanted to read them anymore. Not a world where people were imprisoned for speaking the truth, but where the truth was drowned in an endless sea of distractions. He warned of a civilization so saturated with pleasure, stimulation, and convenience that people would lose the very essence of what it means to be human. The struggle, the pain, the triumph, the depth. Now look around you. Social media feeds carefully designed to hijack your attention, flooding your mind with an endless scroll of mindless content. Short bursts of dopamine-fueled entertainment, keeping you distracted just enough to prevent deep thought. A consumer culture engineered to keep you comfortably numb, ensuring you never stop to ask, "What am I actually doing with my life?" Huxley predicted a future where people would be so entertained, so absorbed in pleasure, that they would cease to think for themselves. And here we are, living in the world he warned us about. We have not been shackled. We have not been forced into obedience. No oppressive force holds a gun to our heads, dictating our every move. Instead, we are lulled into submission by an illusion of freedom. The screens we carry in our pockets condition our behavior more effectively than any totalitarian state could ever hope to. The digital world feeds us just enough novelty and pleasure to ensure we never stop and ask the terrifying question, what am I missing? Are we truly free if our every decision is subtly nudged by algorithms? Are we truly alive if we never have to struggle for anything? Are we truly thinking if our minds are constantly fed pre-packaged entertainment? This is the paradox Huxley saw so clearly. The chains that bind us today are not heavy. They are weightless. And because they are weightless, we do not notice them. And yet, they are there. Now step back. Look at the world you live in. Are you free or are you entertained? The terrifying truth is that control does not always come with a whip. Sometimes it comes with a smile, with a screen, with a soothing voice that says, "You don't have to think too hard, just enjoy." This is the world we have been given. This is the world we have chosen, or perhaps the world that was chosen for us. But here's the question. Is it too late to wake up? Because if Huxley was right, then the greatest prison ever built is not made of walls, nor of chains, nor of locked doors. It is made of comfort, and the deeper you sink into it, the harder it is to escape. But what if there was a way out? What if everything you've been told about happiness, success, and fulfillment was a carefully engineered lie? What if the greatest rebellion of the modern age was simply to think for yourself? Hold that thought, because in the next section, we're going deeper into the hidden forces shaping your mind, your desires, and your reality. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. What if the greatest battle of our time is not fought with weapons, but with attention, not with oppression, but with stimulation? You are not being forced to obey. You are being entertained into submission. Aldous Huxley understood something that most people still refuse to see. True control is not about punishment. It is about distraction. The most efficient way to enslave a population is not to crush their spirit, but to keep them too comfortable to notice they've lost it. Look around. There are no bars on your windows, no dictator censoring your every thought, no boots marching through the streets to enforce ideological purity. And yet somehow, we live in an era where critical thinking is dying. Not because it has been outlawed, but because we have been trained not to care. This is not a coincidence. This is conditioning. We have long feared the wrong dystopia. For decades, Orwell's 1984 has been used as the ultimate warning about authoritarian control, a world of fear, surveillance, and censorship, where people live in terror of saying the wrong thing, stepping out of line, or even thinking the wrong thought. But Huxley, he saw a different path, a more efficient path. Orwell feared that books would be banned. Huxley feared that books would become irrelevant. Orwell warned of a state that would withhold information. Huxley warned of a world where information would be so overwhelming that no one would care to seek the truth. Orwell envisioned control through force. Huxley envisioned control through pleasure. And in the end, it was Huxley who saw the future more clearly. We do not need Big Brother watching us when we willingly carry surveillance devices in our pockets. We do not need a ministry of truth rewriting history when we are too distracted to read it in the first place. We do not need thought police when we have algorithms curating what we see, shaping our desires, and deciding what is relevant before we even get the chance to think for ourselves. This is the great psychological trap of the modern world, a system designed not to enslave you, but to keep you so comfortable and entertained that you never realize you've been captured. If Huxley were alive today, he wouldn't need to write a novel to prove his point. He could simply point to the science of modern attention hacking. Social media engineers do not design platforms to help you think. They design platforms to prevent you from thinking. Every notification, every suggested video, every infinite scroll timeline is a precisely engineered mechanism designed to hijack your brain's reward system. The dopamine cycle keeps you clicking, swiping, consuming. The algorithmic feedback loop ensures you only see what reinforces your existing beliefs. The illusion of choice makes you feel like you're in control, while invisible forces nudge your decisions. Big tech has weaponized distraction so effectively that most people never stop to question why they feel so restless, so anxious, so mentally drained, despite doing so little. This is not a failure of the system. This is the system. And just like Huxley predicted, the average person will never resist it, because they are not forced into submission. They are lulled into it. Huxley's greatest insight was that freedom is not lost in a single catastrophic event. It is lost quietly, not through chains, but through habit, not through violence, but through passivity, not through oppression, but through entertainment. The greatest tragedy of modern society is not that people lack intelligence. It is that they lack the will to use it. It is that they have been taught since birth that thinking deeply is unnecessary. Why struggle to understand a difficult book when a 5-minute summary will tell you what to think? Why wrestle with an uncomfortable idea when an algorithm will keep feeding you content that makes you feel validated? Why sit in silence when your phone offers endless distraction at your fingertips? This is how a civilization collapses, not with a bang, but with a scroll. Huxley's brave new world predicted another terrifying reality. A world where people willingly give up depth, meaning, and greatness in exchange for comfort. A world where art becomes mass-produced entertainment, stripped of depth, designed only for instant gratification. Education becomes memorization, designed to produce workers, not thinkers. Relationships become disposable, reduced to surface-level interactions, designed for convenience. Ambition is replaced with contentment, as long as the next dopamine hit is within reach. It is not that people cannot achieve greatness. It is that they no longer feel the need to. Because why seek wisdom when ignorance is pleasurable? Why fight for meaning when distraction is so easy? We are living in an age where mediocrity is the default setting. And worst of all, Most people don't even realize it. Here is the cruelest irony of all. The happiest people in Huxley's dystopia were the ones who had stopped asking questions. In Brave New World, the perfect citizen was not the revolutionary. It was not the thinker. It was the person who had surrendered completely to pleasure. Are we any different? Most people will never question their reality, not because they aren't smart enough, but because comfort is a drug. And comfort, once accepted as the ultimate goal, ensures that people never ask, "Is this all there is?" Huxley did not write Brave New World as fiction. He wrote it as a warning that people do not need to be forced into submission. They will willingly accept it. People do not need censorship. They will drown in entertainment and forget to think. People do not need chains. They will wrap themselves in pleasure and call it freedom. And here we are, living inside the warning. So the real question is not, how did we let this happen? The real question is there a way out? Because if comfort is the cage, then discomfort is the key. But are you willing to take it? Or will you, like most, simply scroll to the next distraction? The answer determines everything. Hold that thought, because in the next section, we will reveal the unseen consequences of this invisible prison and why most people will never escape. Imagine for a moment that every great thinker in history had chosen comfort over curiosity. Imagine if Socrates had been too distracted to question the nature of truth. If Newton had been too entertained to observe the falling apple. If Einstein had been too comfortable to wonder about the speed of light. Now ask yourself, what discoveries, what revolutions, what masterpieces have been lost? Not because they were forbidden, but because the people who might have created them were too distracted to care? This is the silent tragedy of our time. Not that knowledge is being taken from us, but that we have stopped reaching for it. Not that people cannot think, but that they have been trained not to want to. This is the final consequence of Huxley's Brave New World. Not a world in chains, but a world so mentally sedated that chains are unnecessary. To understand how we arrived here, we must recognize a simple truth. A system that wants control does not need to take away your freedom. It only needs to make you forget that you had it. A system that wants power does not need to silence you. It only needs to keep you entertained enough that you stop speaking. A system that wants obedience does not need to use fear. It only needs to ensure that rebellion feels uncomfortable. Huxley understood this. He saw that in the future, the most powerful drug would not be a chemical, but an experience. And today, we live in that reality. Dopamine-driven entertainment replaces deep thought. Endless information makes real wisdom feel unnecessary. Convenience culture ensures we never have to struggle for anything, so we never grow. Every time we choose immediate gratification over long-term growth, the system wins. Every time we choose comfort over discomfort, the cage tightens. Every time we choose mindless entertainment over deep reflection, we lose a piece of ourselves. The problem isn't that people are being forced into mediocrity. The problem is that mediocrity is so comfortable that most people never notice it. Do you know why most people today struggle to focus? Because their minds have been trained since childhood to crave stimulation. Every time a child is given a screen instead of a book, their attention span shrinks. Every time a complex idea is replaced with a 30-second video, critical thinking dies a little more. Every time social validation replaces internal reflection, people stop looking inward altogether. We do not live in an era of censorship. We live in an era where thinking itself is dying. This is the greatest trick of modern society. Not to make deep thought illegal, but to make it feel pointless. And if you are not actively fighting against this conditioning, then you are, by default, being shaped by it. You believe you are free. You believe you make your own choices. But how many of your decisions are truly yours? What you eat is dictated by marketing, convenience, and engineered cravings. What you believe is reinforced by social media algorithms designed to confirm your biases. What you want in life has been influenced by advertising, entertainment, and cultural programming. You are not a slave in the traditional sense, but your mind has been subtly conditioned, a slow, imperceptible shaping of your desires, fears, and priorities. Huxley predicted this. He understood that the most effective control that is imposed by force, but one that is welcomed as pleasure. Because if you give people everything they think they want, they will never stop to ask if it's what they truly need. And so, generation after generation, people become less aware of their own conditioning, until finally, the concept of breaking free no longer even occurs to them. This is not a conspiracy. This is psychological evolution, shaped by forces that benefit from keeping you numb, distracted, and endlessly entertained. The final, most insidious consequence of this system is that it masquerades as progress. You are told that life is better than ever, that you have more access to knowledge than any human in history, that you are freer, wealthier, and more informed than your ancestors. And yet somehow, anxiety, depression, and meaninglessness have never been higher. If we are so advanced, if we are so intelligent, if we are so free, then why are we so unhappy? The answer is simple: because we have traded depth for stimulation, because we have mistaken entertainment for fulfillment, because we have confused comfort with meaning. Huxley predicted this. And the scariest part? Most people don't even realize it's happening to them. What happens to a society that no longer values thought? What happens when every moment of silence is filled with noise? What happens when pleasure becomes the highest goal at the cost of everything else? We don't need to imagine this world. We are living in it. A world where people no longer ask deep questions because quick answers are easier. A world where people no longer seek wisdom because entertainment is more enjoyable. A world where people no longer value truth because lies are more comfortable. This is not the result of oppression. It is the result of apathy. And the truth is this: if you are not actively breaking free from this system, then you are already a prisoner of it. The question is, how do you escape a prison that you cannot see? Because the final consequence of Huxley's Brave New World is that most people will never realize they are trapped, unless they do something radical. Unless they make a choice that most people will never make. Unless they do the one thing that the system cannot control. But what is that choice? And how do you make it? Hold that thought, because in the next section, we will explore the rebellion, the way out, the radical act that can free you from a world that wants you numb, distracted, and compliant. If you're ready to see the truth, keep watching. But if not, if the idea of breaking free feels too uncomfortable, then perhaps Huxley was right all along. What if the greatest act of rebellion today is not protest, not revolution, not defiance, but something far simpler, yet infinitely more dangerous? What if the most radical thing you could do is to think, not to consume, not to react, not to scroll, but to sit in absolute silence and reclaim your own mind? In a world where attention is the most valuable commodity, the moment you take yours back, the system begins to break. Because a thinking person is a dangerous person. A person who questions everything cannot be controlled. A person who sees the invisible strings cannot be manipulated. A person who chooses discomfort over sedation is no longer a pawn in someone else's game. And so, if you truly want to break free, it begins with a choice. A choice to resist the comfort. A choice to confront the parts of yourself you've been numbing. A choice to stop living as a passive observer and start living with deliberate intent. But how? How do you undo a lifetime of conditioning? How do you break free from a system that was built to keep you asleep? Let's begin. The first step is simple, but brutal. You must turn down the noise, not just externally, but internally. Delete the distractions that hijack your mind. Limit the endless stream of content, notifications, and mindless entertainment. Reclaim your focus. Set aside time for deep, uninterrupted thought. Make solitude a habit. Learn to be alone with your thoughts without reaching for stimulation. Because here's the truth. If you cannot sit in silence without feeling uncomfortable, then you have already lost control of your mind. And the system knows it. It knows that a restless mind is an obedient mind. A mind that constantly seeks stimulation will never stop long enough to question its reality. Huxley's dystopia does not need to force you into submission. It only needs to keep you too entertained to fight back. And so the first act of rebellion is this: choose silence. It will feel unnatural at first, uncomfortable, even painful, because for the first time, you will begin to see your own conditioning. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. The next step is to train your mind for depth. In a world of bite-sized distractions and quick dopamine fixes, the ability to focus deeply is a superpower. And the system? It thrives on keeping you mentally weak. Read books that challenge you, not summaries, not sound bites, but entire works that force you to think. Engage with difficult ideas, philosophy, psychology, science, things that require effort to understand. Sit with discomfort. If something makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Because the truth is, growth does not come from comfort. Huxley warned us, a society that values pleasure over wisdom will eventually lose both. A society that fears difficulty and struggle will become weak. And when that happens, those in control will no longer need to impose their will, because the people will willingly surrender their freedom in exchange for entertainment, distraction, and ease. And so, if you want to escape, you must retrain your mind to love struggle, to crave knowledge, to seek truth over comfort. Because once you do, the system loses its grip on you. The modern world is built on stealing your attention. Think about it. Companies fight for every second of your focus because your attention is worth money. Algorithms are designed to addict you because a distracted person is an easy consumer. Every moment you spend mindlessly consuming, you are strengthening the system that controls you. But the instant you become intentional with your attention, you begin to break free. Spend time in reality, not in artificial worlds. Disconnect from screens, reconnect with nature. Create more than you consume. Write, think, build, engage with the world actively. Choose boredom over distraction. Let your mind wander instead of being constantly fed. Because the truth is this: a person who cannot control their own attention is already controlled by someone else. And if you do not own your focus, the system will use it against you. Here is the hardest part. You must actively choose discomfort. Because the truth is, most people do not want freedom. They want comfort. They want happiness without struggle. They want success without effort. They want wisdom without pain. But life does not work that way. And this is what Huxley understood better than anyone. A world that removes all struggle does not create happiness. It creates emptiness. A world that makes everything easy does not produce freedom. It produces weakness. A world that prioritizes pleasure above all else does not lead to fulfillment. It leads to addiction, apathy, and decay. And so, the final act of rebellion is this: choose growth over comfort. Seek out challenges instead of avoiding them. Push yourself beyond what is easy. Find meaning in struggle rather than escaping it. Because the truth is, nothing worth having comes without effort. Nothing worth knowing is found in shallow distractions. Nothing worth becoming happens without sacrifice. This is what the system does not want you to realize, because the moment you embrace discomfort, you become impossible to control. Most people will never escape. They will continue to live inside the machine, never questioning it. They will continue to consume, obey, and submit, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. But you are different, because you have seen the hidden chains, because you understand that comfort is the cage. And now, you have a choice. You can go back, return to the distractions, the ease, the numbness, or you can step forward into discomfort, into struggle, into real life. Most people will never choose the second option. But then again, most people are not free. There is something they don't tell you about waking up, something they don't warn you about before you start asking questions. It's not that breaking free is hard, though it is. It's not that most people will resist you, though they will. It's something far worse. Once you wake up, you can never go back. Once you see the illusion, it will never feel real again. Once you recognize the invisible cage, you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. Once you understand that your comfort has been carefully engineered to keep you passive, you will never experience it the same way again. And that, right there, is the final cost of freedom. Not everyone is ready to pay it. Aldous Huxley did not just predict a controlled society. He predicted a society that would embrace its own enslavement, that would celebrate it. And so, the moment you begin to wake up, you will see people laughing, mindlessly scrolling, numbing themselves, unaware of the trap they are in. You will hear people repeating the same empty slogans about success, happiness, and fulfillment, without realizing they have been programmed to do so. You will watch as they defend their distractions, mock deep thought, and reject any idea that forces them to sit in discomfort. And you will feel alone. Because when you wake up in a world where most people are asleep, you become an outsider. Not by force, not by choice, but by the simple fact that you see what they don't. And this is where most people break. They realize that thinking deeply alienates them, that questioning the system makes them a threat, that rejecting comfort means choosing a life that is harder, lonelier, and infinitely more uncertain. And so they turn back. They pretend they never saw the truth. They convince themselves that maybe ignorance really is bliss. They distract themselves until the voice in their head, the one whispering that something is deeply wrong, finally fades away. Because that's the easier choice. That's the choice most people will make. And Huxley? He knew that too. Huxley did not just predict a society enslaved by pleasure. He predicted that most people would choose it voluntarily, not because they were weak, but because the alternative was too terrifying to face. Because what happens when you wake up? What happens when you break free from the system? You are left with only yourself. There is no one left to tell you what to think. No one left to curate your desires. No one left to comfort you with false certainty. And that is terrifying, because freedom is not safety. Because truth is not comforting. Because meaning is not given. It must be created. And most people, when faced with this reality, will run back to the illusion, because it is easier to be entertained than to think. Because it is easier to be comforted than to be challenged. Because it is easier to live inside a lie than to bear the weight of the truth. But if you are still here, if you have not turned back, then maybe, just maybe, you are one of the few. If you have made it this far, you already know the truth. Now the question is, what do you do with it? Because here is the harshest reality of all. No one is coming to save you. There is no rebellion waiting to liberate you. There is no movement that will break the system for you. There is no leader who will hand you the answers. It is only you. And that is the final, most difficult lesson. If you want to be free, you must free yourself. If you want to escape, you must be willing to walk alone. If you want truth, you must seek it. Not in slogans, not in headlines, not in pre-packaged ideas, but in the depths of your own mind. Because freedom is not something you find, it is something you build. And most people, they will never do it. They will stay plugged in. They will keep scrolling. They will keep numbing themselves. And in the end, they will convince themselves they were free all along. This is where most people fail. They wake up. They see the truth. They begin to question everything. And then life pulls them back in. Another distraction, another dopamine hit, another wave of engineered stimulation designed to erase the discomfort of awareness. And before they realize it, they forget. Not in a single moment, not in some dramatic collapse, but slowly, subtly, over time. Until one day, they wake up again, back in the illusion, back in the machine, just another cog in the system that once terrified them. And that is the final question. Not, will you wake up, but will you stay awake? Because the system is designed to make you forget. Because the moment you stop fighting, it will pull you back. Because if you are not actively resisting, you are already losing. And so, the choice is yours. Go back to comfort. Forget this video. Convince yourself it was all just an overreaction. Or, step forward into the unknown. Embrace discomfort. Seek truth, no matter how painful it may be. Most people will never take the second option. But then again, most people will never be free. The question is, will you?